Welcome to day 21 in the 25-day mini vlog Bible study series. We are almost done. It is 25 mini lessons that you will find in the Run workbook. What I do is I take 25 little lessons that you find tucked in this study and I pull them out. I zoom you in on the page number and we kind of just go over that lesson together. So that way you can always use Run as a devotional. If you just wanted to jump in and do 25 days, you have this available. If you're taking the study right now at one of the local communities or at your church, you can always go to the 25-day study and pull out little lessons here and there. So it's used for that. It's quick. They're usually no longer than 15 minutes, and the goal is for you to just listen to them. Listen to them on your way to work. Maybe open it up and use it as an evening devotional or a morning devotional. And if you don't have the workbook, that's okay. I highly encourage you, though, to get the workbook because there's so many practical lessons tucked in this study. This study is developed to help you run the spiritual race. What does that even mean? How did God create us to run spiritually alongside of everything that goes on in our life? And how do we win? So that's really what the Run study is about. Like I said, there's tons of lessons. Today on day 21, one of my favorite lessons, we're going to learn about the idea of not throwing your pearls to the pigs. Wow. So I've got a little picture here. Don't I look cute as a piggy? Do not throw your pearls to the pigs. What the heck does that mean, Heather? Okay, so let's jump in this together. If you have the Run book, open to page 203. It's tucked in session 6. And that session is titled The Hidden Treasure. So really, what does it mean to throw a pearl to a pig? What does that mean? I know this lesson will stick because this was a verse in the Bible, which we're going to see in a minute, that just really, it made me want to dig more. And that's really how this chapter came about in the Run study. So let me just ask you this, or let me first give you a fact and then ask you a couple questions in regards to a pearl. But first, a fact. A pearl in Jesus' day, a pearl was one of the most highly prized, valuable items. It was worth more than gold. So let's just know that as a fact. That was how valuable a pearl was. If a pearl was found, it was a valued treasure, and merchants would dig and hide that in the land. And so just keep that in mind for a minute. And now I want you to just kind of go back into your history lessons, and if I was standing in front of you and I said, how is a pearl formed? What would you answer? If you can just think about that for a minute. How is a beautiful, valuable pearl formed? Well, the answer to that is through an irritant. I love that. Love that. A pearl is when an irritant gets into the shell, the oyster or the mussel. An irritant gets in there. An irritant can be a particle of a small shell. It can be a piece of sand. It can be a food particle. Something that's washed up and just jams in the opening of a mussel or an oyster. Now here's the amazing thing. When that irritant gets inside of that mussel or oyster, the process now begins that creates the pearl. So the irritant must happen in order for the pearl to be created. So inside of this mussel or oyster, you'll see there's like a mucus. There's like a outer covering, which is a protection. And I love that. So key word here, key word. There is a layer of protection inside of that shell. And the only way that that protection is kind of kicked into force is when that irritant is slipped in. Let's just call it pearlizing. That is when the pearl takes form. That's when like the pearl takes over. So, gosh, I wish we could just like peek in and just watch all of that happen. But this really struck me because here's why. There are irritations in all of our lives. All of our lives, okay? And those irritations are designed to bring a pearl. So I'm just going to say it again. Those irritations are designed to create a pearl. God has given us a whole rhythm and a method. He has taught us in His Word what is going to protect us. And so when there's things that are irritated, we need to learn first not to choose to become angry. We need to choose not to become cranky or wounded. Or a lot of times we just tend to put up a wall and we don't even allow God's protective forces to kind of take over. God's created us in such a way. He's left us with His Word, which we're going to see in a minute, is really that kind of protective layer that covers us. He's left us with that until He comes back and things will be perfect. He's left us. He didn't leave us with a bunch of rules and demanding ways and religions and force us to do this and that. No, He loved us so much. He left us with some sort of protection because He knew, and His Word tells us, in this world, we are going to have tribulation. We are going to have troubles. But He left us with a treasure. So beautiful. He left us with protection, and we miss that. So let me ask you, pick an irritant in your life. Just come on now, let's be honest with ourselves. We are our worst enemies. Sometimes it's ourselves. We irritate ourselves. Maybe there's an irritant in your marriage right now. Maybe there's an irritant in your job. Maybe there's an irritant within a relationship, an addiction. Perhaps it's the chaos in today's world, the tragedies that are happening in our streets. And we can sit here and we can point fingers and we can point guns at all of the irritants, whether it's racism. I don't even want to spill into that. But here's the thing, it has irritated a lot of Americans. It has really created chaos in our nation. And listen, that's an irritant. But I want to zoom in on a promise that I know God has really left us. And if you can grab this lesson today, it's going to make so much sense that you will begin to tap in to the idea that God is beginning to pearlize your irritant. And maybe you'll step back and look at some of those irritants that slipped into your life, and you'll allow God to work. You'll allow Him to work. So in Colossians 3:1, which again you'll see in the study, in Colossians 3:1, it reminds us that if you set your heart on the thing above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of the Father, if we set our hearts on that above, you will see change. That's the only way that you'll see change. So right now, I just want to remind you that we need to set our hearts on what's above. And a lot of times that's an adjustment in our personal lives. It's an adjustment in your belief system. It's an adjustment in your values. But we were asked to set our hearts on the things that are above. And so with that in mind, that is where we're going to find truth. That is where we're going to find truth. Truth is going to equal the pearls. Truth is going to equal the protection. Truth is what creates the pearls in our lives. When the irritants get into our little crevices and little cracks, our little oysters, our little mussels, when irritants get in there, whether it's our marriage, like I said, jobs, our dreams, our relationships, friendships, our nation, when those irritants slip inside, God's left us with something to protect us. He's left us with that. But again, it's a choice. Are we going to allow God the opportunity to pearlize and get in there and create something beautiful out of an irritant? It really comes down to a decision. But let me share what we do. And I'm going to open up to page 207. And this is just, when I read this when I read this before I created actually this page in my study, I had to read this verse over and over again because it sounded funny. I'll be honest, but the more I studied it, the more I began to see what the world does around what I did in certain seasons in my life, what I tend to kind of go back to. If I'm not reminded to set my heart on the things above, I tend to go back and do this. And so I want to share this verse with you. Again, it's on page 207. It's Matthew chapter 7, verse 6. Follow me on this. It says, do not give that which is holy, the sacred thing, the thing that we need to be setting our hearts toward, okay? Do not give that which is holy, the sacred thing, to the dogs. And do not throw your pearls before hogs. Some translations say, do not throw your pearls to the pigs. Do not throw your pearls to the swines. Do not throw your pearls to the pigs. Okay, let me finish. Lest they trample upon them with their feet and turn and tear you to pieces. Listen, the enemy is real. The Satan knows how to create chaos. He knows how to keep you away from the truth. And what is happening is that we are taking everything that God's left us, all the truths that he's tucked in the word, the idea that we're to set our hearts to the things above. If the enemy can create chaos and confusion and keep us away from that, then he wins. And the number one thing that happens is when we're presented with an irritant, and God's always at work around us. He's always at work. He's always kind of presenting a truth to protect us here and there. And what happens is we either become self-centered, selfish, arrogant. We think that we know better. What we're actually doing is taking the truths that God has already prepared for us and we're throwing them to the pigs. We're taking the pearls of God's truth. Each pearl. God's given us a pearl on how to handle anger. God's given us a pearl on how to stay united in this nation. God's given us pearls of protection. He's given us pearls on how to deal with our marriage, how to deal with our children, he's given us so many pearls of truth. And he presents it in a unique way in every individual's life. But we have a way, whether it's through laziness or lack of knowledge or disbelief, whatever, we have a way of taking that pearl and throwing it to the pig, is really what we do. And that is when our life becomes trampled on. And we're torn up into pieces. The Bible says, torn to pieces. That's a picture of our nation today. It's a picture of choices that every individual takes. But really, we need to step aside, and this is kind of just a time for us to self-examine. We need to step aside and say, you know what, I'm going to acknowledge the truth. I'm going to set my heart on the things above. I'm going to try this. I'm going to trust in this. Because if God can take an oyster and a mussel, the creator of the universe, and allow an irritant to get inside of that little shell, and then produce the most beautiful pearl, I have to imagine, I cannot imagine, I mean, really, when you really think about that, the hands of God, I can't imagine what he can do in your marriage. I can't imagine right now what he can do in your jobs, in your dreams, in the things that you might write out in frustration. Do you know that God sees a pearl? He sees a pearl in our nation. But remember, one nation under God. Under God. We're to be setting our hearts on the things of God. Above. We're under. We need to set our eyes and our hearts on the things above, but we don't do that. We choose to make a joke of all of this and throw every piece of truth to a pig, is really what it looks like. We're throwing it to a pig. When really that pearl should be so valued. So valued. It's precious. The truth God left us with is precious. It should be highly prized. It should be buried in our hearts. And honestly, this is where we're finding our greatest protection. When we find our greatest protection, we're protected, and that's where change comes. When you feel protected and secure in your marriage by one little piece of truth. And what happens is, this is only the supernatural ways of God. But when you begin to operate on his truths and promises, the Bible says that it'll leave you with a peace that surpasses all understanding. Truth will do that. It will protect your marriage. It will protect our nation. It'll protect you in the job situation. It'll protect your mind. It'll separate you from the world and protect you. And in the midst of all the irritants, God's all about creating a pearl in your life. I love that. I'm so happy that one day, and you will find her story. I'm so happy. Let me finish that. I was really happy one day when a lady, she actually presented me with an Alex and Ani bracelet, and what you'll see in my bracelet is a oyster right here. It's a little oyster. I'll come up closer. It's a little oyster, and you can kind of see it's behind my other ones. Turn it around. Let me turn it around. You can see the pearl inside of the oyster shell. Do you see that? And she presented that to me one day after one of our Bible study sessions, and her story is tucked in the run book. She has a devastating story, and I know God is doing an amazing work in her life and in her children's lives, but her husband took his life. And what an irritant of confusion, depression, you name it. I mean, I really cannot speak for her what type of feelings that she had. But I know when we came together and did this study, we were encouraging each other to run in such a way, to run the spiritual race no matter how hard your mile was. And when we got to this lesson, there are things in life that we just don't understand. But one thing that we can learn, and listen, you can only learn by acknowledging truth and studying it and gaining the wisdom and the knowledge, which gives you the discernment for your situation. You can't learn how to handle some of these tragic events that people experience in life. We have to allow truth to cover us and protect us in that season and allow God to form the pearl. There's no perfect answer. You can struggle in every self-help book, but there was a piece that Lydia got that day in class when she realized, you know what, God's given me all the truth, and I just have to lean into that protection and that promise every day. I have to make that choice. And just coming to Bible study and surrounding yourself around other women that are setting their hearts on the things above. Sometimes that's all you need in life to encourage you to get to that place to receive truth, to protect you and the wound or the irritant that's going on in your heart. And I loved that. And I loved her vulnerability. And her story is tucked in the run book. And she lives every day with that. But she knows that God is creating a pearl for her children and for herself. And God is not done. He's got dreams and plans for Lydia and Lydia's boys. But I just wanted to share that with you because pearls are so valuable. God's truth is so valuable that we need to stand today and stop taking those opportunities where God's trying to work in your life and really make a joke of it. You're really taking some truth and you're throwing it to a pig, and we're allowing more chaos in our world. So I'm praying that this lesson was a blessing to you. I'm really excited about it. It really made sense because I'm a visual. So think about the truth. What are you possibly throwing to pigs? Are you throwing truths to pigs because you're lazy? Because you just don't want to believe? Are you arrogant? So there's so many ways that we throw truth to the pigs. So examine yourself today. We do it. We all are guilty. So let's stand together and just thank God for the truth, the promises, and the protection that He gave us and our nation. So if you are loving these podcasts and these vlogs, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Find me on Facebook. I love to do live events over different topics and everything. I'm loving hanging out with you guys, and be blessed today. Find that truth and value it, protect it, and hide it in your heart. Thanks for joining. When the door wasn't open, just admit it. See, I gave you faith, turned your doubt into hope, and can't deny it.